used. But I mean, officially, a Muslim is, even a Muslim who accepts the Hadith methodology, which for the record, I find ridiculous. I find it ridiculous to say this is the only way to do history. No historian on the planet does history this way. And according to Muslims, who are certainly not the authorities when it comes to history, this is the only way you do history. But even if we take that method seriously, it's not the collection of Bukhari in itself that's authoritative or something like that. Any source, any hadith that you have that meets the requirements of a sound narration, of a sahih narration, whatever the source is, should in theory be accepted by Muslims. So you need to be able to flip that back on people. So if you're quoting, let's say, Sunan an-Nasai, even if you get the English translations of Sunan an-Nasai and Jami' at-Tirmidhi and Sunan ibn Majah and so on, which aren't as respected as Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari, if you get those, then they usually come with grades at the end of the hadith. It'll say, is this sahih, is this da'if, and so on. So if you've got a hadith that you're presenting and it's classified as sahih, your Muslim friends are supposed to take, if they're Sunni Muslims, they're supposed to accept that hadith from that collection. And so you need to start flipping this back on people, and you can do this in two ways. One, you can, if you're quoting a hadith and the Muslim says, I don't trust that, then you say, okay, you show me a respected hadith scholar who says that this is unreliable and give me the reasons for it. But right now it sounds like you're just rejecting it because you don't like it. Because that's, just to be clear, that's what most Muslims are doing when they're rejecting hadith.
That's right.
It's not because they've examined the reliability of the hadith. They don't like what the hadith says. So that's one way. And another route is to challenge the Islamic community that is producing these stories, right? I mean, Bukhari, in order to get to the 7,000 or so hadiths that actually ended up in Bukhari, had to go through literally hundreds of thousands of stories until he got to these ones that he considered
600,000 to be exact.
most reliable. So he goes through hundreds of thousands of stories. What's the community that's putting out hundreds of thousands of false stories?
Yeah.
It's the Muslim community. Now, you're basically telling me that you have the biggest bunch of liars in history if they're putting out stories about Muhammad left and right that are fabricated. Guess who's preserving the Quran during this time? This same community of habitual liars, not according to me, according to what Muslims are telling me. Oh, you can't trust that source. Oh, you can't trust that source. You can't trust that source. You can't trust that source. This is the same community that's preserving the Quran. So if the more Muslims challenge their own sources, the more they're calling into question the community that was producing this information. So in other words, I have 50 now. I'm up to 50 sources on